Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturian Society.
Welcome, everybody. You hesitated for a second.
I did. I forgot it very briefly, and I was like, keep going. Your muscle memory will just kick in.
It did. See, you did way better than I usually do, where I'm like, what are our names? Do I have to introduce who we are now? And on that note, that over there is Carissa Harlow, the Lewis to my Tolkien. I am the Tolkien to her Lewis, Ash O'Rourke.
Yeah.
So, look at that. That was probably our smoothest intro so far.
Woohoo.
All because your very, very brief hesitation that probably only I noticed gave me the confidence that I needed.
You're welcome.
Thank
My
you.
failure is your gain.
Well, I was like, oh, she's relatable. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see how Chris has got this really strong Galadriel vibe going on right now. So she just looks like this gorgeous queen, and she's always so much more on top of things than I am. So for some reason I was like, she is but human. I too can succeed.
She makes mistakes. Amazing.
Amazing. I love to see it.
I'm glad I'm relatable.
Very relatable. How has your week been? I feel like I know it's only been a week, but it really feels like a long time since I've talked to you.
Ash, so much has happened to me. Okay, first of all,
this is so
I
exciting.
left the house. It was great.
You sent me a picture and I was like, you sent me a picture of your drink. And my first thought before you even said, look, proof I left the house, I was thinking, that's not a kitchen table. She's out somewhere.
Where is she? Yeah. So I went out for a breakfast brunch kind of thing with one of my friends, with Jordan. So that was fun. And we got these cool, they were called purple hazes, and they're lavender infused lemonade. They were delicious.
That sounds so good.
It was so good.
Is it warm enough for lemonade there?
No, but It was good anyway.
Oh, good. It's supposed to be 20 degrees here tomorrow, and everyone's been told to stay home because it's also been raining for days straight. So it's just going to be a sheet of ice everywhere tomorrow.
Gosh, it only rained a little bit today, and I'm like, give us more. I want more rain, but I think it's only in the 50s or 60s. So I mean, it's cold to me, but it was good. What?
Sorry, I was going to say, so what was the occasion for your lemonade?
Oh, we were just going out to see each other. We hadn't gotten together in a while. We've been passing each other for a couple of weeks. We're we should get together, and she was working, and then I had other things going on, and so I was like, okay. So finally we got together, and I had these really good lemon ricotta pancakes that were delicious. And also my dad had given one of our neighbors lemons off of his tree, or my aunt's tree or something, and she made us a lemon ricotta cake out of it.
What?
Which was also delicious. So I was just on a lemon kick this week. It was
That's
so
amazing.
good.
I have such great news for you. Would you like to hear it? It's directly related to lemons. The property that we are in the process of purchasing has a lemon tree.
Yay! That's awesome.
You can come stay with me and have all the lemons that you want.
I love it. Growing up, my dad had a grapefruit tree, an orange tree, and a lemon tree. And I just thought it was very normal to have citrus fruit in your backyard. And so I'd be like, yeah, we went out and picked grapefruits this weekend. And people would be like, what are you talking about? Where do you do that? I'm like, my backyard.
Our yard. Duh. Don't you also have a grapefruit tree in your backyard?
Doesn't everyone have a grapefruit tree? Is that not, it's like that VeggieTales song, everyone's got a water buffalo. Does everyone have a grapefruit tree?
Yeah, but no. Growing up, we had a fig tree and a pomegranate tree in the backyard, but then we inherited these pointers when a family member passed away, these German short-haired pointers, which if you know, they're hunting dogs. And they're also assholes. They're not mean. These were trained too. And they were just dicks. They chewed off the side of the house, which is insane. And they chewed both trees down to a little nub. And they just wouldn't listen. Their names were Belle and Lucky, but Lucky's full name was actually Damn Lucky because she'd been bit by a rattlesnake twice, but survived. Different instances.
Nice.
So that was Damn Lucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Except that they destroyed everything we own.
Well, yeah, their names are cool, not anything else.
Yeah, literally nothing else. But yeah. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting your story.
No, you're cool. So then we also went to the library, which was awesome, and I got books. I haven't had a library card in...
You finally went to the library.
I did. I think I was 10 the last time I went to a public library. And it's mostly because I still want to read a lot, but I want to buy fewer books because money. And so I went in, and librarians are always so nice. And she was like, did you just move here? I was like, no.
Lived here my entire life.
Yeah. And my card has a little hummingbird on it. It's cool.
Aww.
And then I went, like, I was with Jordan, my friend, and I was like, okay, we're going to head straight toward that neon sign that says teens, even though we are not teenagers anymore. So I went to the teen section and I got some young adult books, and I'm excited to read them.
Mine is like the reverse in life, where I used to go to the library all the time because I couldn't buy books. And now I'm in a place in life where, like, I also justify it because I do it for the podcast. So I'm also like, it's a business expense. I have to. But I also, and I want to be able to take pictures of the books for social media purposes. So now I have all these reasons. I don't have that much more money, but I have so many reasons that I can justify spending the money. So now I don't have a library card, which is weird for me. But
wow.
Yeah,
I'm excited. There are like 3 libraries kind of within reasonable distance of my house. So I'm going to go between them all and see which one I like the best.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then also this week, have you seen Encanto, the movie?
No, but I mean, I've seen a million like little clips from it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I watched it like a couple days ago, and I did not realize that like 50% of the sounds going around TikTok right now are from that movie.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. It's like every couple minutes in the movie, I was like, hey, I know this. I recognize this. Now I have context for it. And I really loved this movie. It was so good. But it also made me very anxious in like a weird way, because it felt very similar in premise to my book. Right. Ooh. And so sometimes when I see or read things that are very similar, particularly when I'm writing and not reading, because I can only do one at a time, when I'm like in writer mode, I get really anxious when other things are like too similar, because then I'm like, oh man, is mine not as good? Like which is stupid to compare a young adult novel to an animated Disney movie for kids that is also a musical. So
very, very different.
Very different. But I like the whole movie. I'm like, why am I so upset? I really like this. And I think that's why.
That's funny. But I mean, if anything, you could take it as more of an encouragement to say that like people actually do want that type of story, which is nice.
I try to look at it that way. And I did really love it. And it has this cool thing, like I think it's in a lot of South American cultures where like the generations all live in the same house.
Yeah, Italians do that too.
Yeah, I love that. It was such a cool element.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm excited because see, the same house to me that feels like a lot, but we are buying the property with my mom.
I was gonna say, it kind of reminded me of you. I was like, that's what Ash is doing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna have 2 separate homes on the property. But I just love that idea. I like the idea of like living on like one property with your family. One building feels like a lot to me, but I know everybody does it. Like not everybody, but a lot of other cultures do it.
Cultures and people. Yeah.
Very normal, very like cool. You said, in Latin America, very normal in Italy. That just sounds like a lot to me. I mean, my mom is great. I could actually be fine probably doing it with my mother because we're like freakishly close. But yeah, any other family members? No.
Yeah, it depends on if you like your family, I guess.
Yeah. Well, also like just like how much do you like your family before you don't? Like, where is the breaking?
How much can you handle?
Yeah, because I love all of my family, but I have very different breaking points with all of them. And then also it's not just like my breaking, because I'm a pretty peaceable person, even if it doesn't seem like it. So it's not just me though, it's everybody else. How does everybody else get along with each other? Because like my siblings fought like cats and dogs growing up. So like having them in the same house as me would be stressful, not because I would fight with them, but because they'd fight with each other all the time.
And then that would make you tense. I watched this YouTube video of a therapist breaking down all of the characters in like the movie and how they interact. That's awesome. And she was like, there are certain types, I guess, in families, and she was like comparing them. And I was watching, I was like, I think Ash is a Camilo.
Oh, really?
No, I was like, I think that's who Ash is. Yeah, I think that he's the one that kind of like diffuses tension with humor. And I'm like, Ash.
Oh yeah, that's definitely me. It's 100% me. Everyone's like literally screaming and in tears. And I'm like, anyone want to hear a joke?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're literally like, no. I used to make my siblings so mad. Like they would yell because I'm like trying to diffuse the situation. And they're like, we don't want your jokes, Ash. We want to be angry. I don't understand.
Like at all costs, I will fix this. And they're like, we don't want to be fixed.
Exactly. Yeah, I still do that.
Yeah. And funny. I think I'm kind of like Bruno, which if you've heard like the song,
we don't talk about Bruno.
I feel a certain kinship with him that is slightly concerning, but I love him. So
see, I don't really know his story. I just
when you watch it, I feel like I have Bruno. Some similarities. Yeah.
See, now I have to watch it purely because of your take on it. That's
Yeah,
fun.
I'll talk to you about it more once you see it, because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it.
Now I have
and
to
love the music.
prioritize seeing it. I've been like kind of like not as interested in cartoons lately. I'm just not really a big cartoon person, but I love musicals. So
Yeah,
I just need to prioritize that one.
Yep. I think you'll like it. And it's very like magical, not to give too much away, but there's like magic and stuff in it. Oh my gosh. we will get to Ash's shoulder in just a second.
If you guys just saw me make a horrible face on the YouTube video, I'm sorry.
On like before we get to that. So I also went to the dentist this morning, and guess who might have to get her wisdom teeth taken out?
Oh, girl, twinsies. I also need mine taken out badly.
Wait, okay. So you don't have yours. You still have yours?
Yep.
Okay.
A few years ago, they were like, you won't have to get them out. And then when I went back in, they're like, so your wisdom teeth grew into your jawbone. So we're going to have to cut through your jawbone. And I was like, oh my I could have been informed of this years ago.
Yeah. Okay. This is so weird. So I was under, I don't know. Did I dream this? I thought you had your wisdom teeth out like between freshman and sophomore year at GCU. And apparently I was wrong. No. And I was telling my mom this, and she's like, no, Ash was saying something about how she needed to get them out, but like couldn't yet. And I was like, what are you talking about? So my mom remembered better than me. So that's interesting.
So funny. Yeah, no, I didn't. Because I've always had like some jaw pain on and off, and I probably thought I need to get them out, but the dentists say it's not a problem yet. And so then I trusted the dentists who said it wasn't, it very well may never be a problem.
Yeah.
And then when I went back to the dentist, because it got so bad, like 6 months ago, probably now, that like my gums were bleeding, and it was like my face was just throbbing. And I was like, what is happening? And so I went to the dentist, and they were like, charged me so much money to say you have 3 cavities. And I was like, I didn't come here about the cavities. I don't care.
There are bigger problems.
There are bigger problems. And they're like, oh, and also you need to have all of your wisdom teeth removed, and the bottom 2 are in your jawbone now. And I was like, and also apparently I have some weird bone that grew into the bottom of my mouth that like only some people get. So it hurts really bad when they put the giant magnety thing in your mouth. Yeah. And you have to bite on it, because it literally just stabs straight down into that bone. So that was great. So then I had 2 like giant sores inside my mouth just from the x-ray. And then they were like, so it's going to be like $2,500 just for the wisdom teeth removal. And so I 6 months, not even for the cleaning and the cavities, it was going to be like $900. So I obviously didn't get any of that done. And it's 6 months later.
That's crazy. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to cost that much. I think it's with I have like a discount plan. It's like $100 per tooth. So that's crazy.
Nice. That's amazing. I guess because I have to saw through my jawbone.
Yeah, that's true. Because so I have 3 that are out and 1 that's fine. And then so because I don't want to go into too much detail, but like I have heart issues or whatever. And so they're very hesitant to put me under anesthesia if I don't have to be. So for most of my teen years, my dentist was like, look, you're not having problems. We probably don't need to risk it and take them out. Right. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And it was never a problem until like the past 6 months.
Yep.
And now suddenly like I think I have cavities in 1 or 2 of them. The dental hygienist is like, yeah, it's like infecting the surrounding gum and bone. And I'm like, okay. I feel no pain. I am not feeling anything. So I just had no idea.
Wow.
And so they're like, yeah, we might have to revisit this. And it's like, apparently the younger you are, the better. And,
yes,
an old lady here in my 20s. I'm like,
I know, they told me, they were like, so the chances of us hitting a nerve, you should get this done as soon as possible, because we might hit this nerve that'll make you lose permanent feeling if ever you're over the age of 25. And I waited 6 months because I was like, I don't have $3,500 basically dollars to do all of this.
Right.
So I waited, and now I'm like, I will easily be 25. So I guess I'm just going to hope you don't hit the nerve.
Exactly. I don't know. It's crazy. And I guess maybe that's why I don't know why it's worse when you get older and stuff, but I'm like, okay, I guess I have to get on this as soon as possible, because I don't want it to get worse, and I don't want to have to go in when it's riskier. So I don't even know. I have to like get an appointment to consult with the oral surgeon, but like, I don't even know if he'll be willing to do it because of like the anesthesia stuff. So I'm hoping he will.
Yeah, I hope so too. I had to go talk to the oral surgeon. Like I got all my referrals and everything done, and then I got the final number, but that was 6 months ago. So now I feel like they're going to make me go through all of it again, because it's been 6 months.
Yeah.
Which is just infuriating, because I already went through all this, but I didn't have $3,500 in my pocket to do it. Right. So
like, it's honestly the same issue.
Yeah. I don't know how people take care of their teeth? Like,
I know
it's so expensive. How, if you don't have dental insurance, which is also expensive and not always necessary,
right?
Like, how do you do this?
And like your teeth are so weird. Like I went years and years with like zero problems. And then suddenly my mouth is like, actually, we're going to kill you slowly. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Apparently mine too. And it was literally fine, to the point that a couple of years ago, dentists were like, it probably won't even be a problem.
Exactly.
And I'm like, so just in the last few years, my teeth grew into my jawbone.
I know. And there's like no way to predict that this is going to happen. So you can do it before that happens.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Crazy. Anyways,
yep, that's annoying.
I'm sorry.
I think it's okay. I really hate anesthesia because I have been under it before and I react badly to it.
That's not great. I mean, they could do the thing where one of my ex-boyfriends, I took him to get his out, and they just decided to remove
that's what I'm thinking.
Maybe that.
Did you do that when you were at GCU?
Yes. When I went home, I took my
I knew there was
ex-boyfriend.
something.
Yeah. And so what they did was, you should ask them if they can do a local anesthetic and remove them one at a time. Because he only had to get 2 out, but he just went in twice, and they didn't put him under. They just put a local anesthetic in, and he was awake, and it was painless, and they just took out one, and then he had to go back for the other. But I don't know. I know you have to do 3, but maybe that's better. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, because they're all out. It's not like they're impacted or causing problems with that. Like they're both erupted. I guess that's what it's called. So
yeah. So maybe they can do a local anesthetic and just do it in 3 rounds. I'd never heard of somebody doing that. I don't know why his dentist did that, but his were the same. Like they were no complications. They were already erupted. So I don't know.
Well, anyway, that was my week. Super fun.
That's super fun. Oh my God.
What about you and your shoulder or other things?
Well, so if you're watching on YouTube, then you can see that I have a makeshift sling. Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh. So don't hurt yourself.
I have a makeshift sling made out of a scarf on my arm. And I've got an ice pack I've had on and off all day on my shoulder because I think I might have bursitis in my shoulder again. A couple years ago, I went to a stunt intensive, and I used to do like train for like movie stunts. I never actually did any for movies, so nobody get excited. It's not that cool. But I did do like training for them just because I think they're really fun. And I went to a stunt intensive in Dallas that was a couple days long, and we were doing for this one of the days, I think it was the last day, we were doing like these, like we had to like leap over an obstruction and then roll, like leap into a roll. And I always landed on my shoulder and rolled off my left shoulder. And then I didn't notice until I got back, like my left shoulder was really sore and it was getting worse, and I couldn't really lift my arm up very well. And I worked at a preschool in an infant room where I had to carry around babies. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, it's probably bursitis, which is just like when stuff gets really inflamed. And I was like, well, what can I do about it? And they're like, well, if it gets really bad, we have to go in there and like pop something or shoot steroids into it or something. But otherwise, you just have to literally not use your arm at all for like 2 weeks. And I was like, for 2 weeks to not even use my arm. So I'm kind of hoping that's what it is, because that's kind of what it feels like. And also because everything else on the internet that would be pain in that area is probably more complicated. So I'm just assuming that it's bursitis and treating it like it's bursitis. So, but yeah. And then I also, let's see if I can gently move my arm out of my very sad makeshift sling. I pulled a muscle like here, like right above, I think I strained a tendon or something. Yeah. Cause I don't actually think there's like a muscle right here. I think it's like a tendon thing. And I heard it weeks ago. And then my dumbass, that was probably God being like, hey, take it easy on like your exercise because your arm's kind of injured. And I was like, nah, I think I'm going to push through. And so I did. And I really, my shoulder was a little bit sore from like my workout the day before, because there was like a little bit of push-ups here and there in the workout. And then was it yesterday morning's workout? It was every single repetition in this workout video was different types of push-ups. So it was literally all push-ups, and my shoulder hurt really bad doing it. But I was, for some reason, it didn't even occur to me like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this.
You're like, this is normal exercise pain. I will keep going.
Yeah. Well, honestly, exercise is so miserable to me anyways, that I'm like, it's the same. It's all the same. I hate exercise, and I do it every day, except for today, because I woke up and I was like, yeah, nope.
Yeah, physically not capable.
Physically cannot do it. So now I'm also like annoyed because I was finally getting into like a rhythm of working out every morning, and like I still hate it, but because I was getting into a rhythm, it wasn't like agonizing to just drag myself out of the bed half an hour early.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, what can I do where I don't even like move or jog my shoulder? Because everything like makes your shoulders move.
Mm-hmm.
So
you don't realize that till it's injured. And then you're like, wow, I really use my shoulder a lot.
Well, exactly. Like just even like for balance. So that wasn't fun. And then I went to, because we're expecting another freeze here, and snowpocalypse last year in Texas was no fun.
Oh yeah.
So everybody almost died, including myself. My other co-host on That Pretentious Book Club slipped on the ice and basically she like, I would say she broke her leg, but I think a broken leg would heal faster. Like she messed up. She like tore something in her knee really badly, and it took forever to heal. And so she's like, I'm not even going outside until it's above freezing again. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah. But basically, so here's one of my big complaints. So this all ties together. Our last year's apartment complex, it was an old building. We had a lot of issues with them, largely because of snowpocalypse and also because they lied. But basically it was an allocated allocated water, which basically means they count up all of like the water cost for your whole building and then split it between all of you, which is very unfair because we were in a 1-bedroom and Javi was gone most of the year. So it was literally just me. And I'm like, and there's other like full families living in these buildings.
Right. You're averaging out with families of like 5 or 6.
Exactly. Yeah. So I already don't love it, but it's because also like it's like that building, and our new complex, unfortunately as well, does the same thing and has an old heating system. So they run water through the pipes. So the hot water in the pipes is what then they blow the air out and it's, heats. Right. So the thing is, if a pipe freezes anywhere in the complex, then everybody loses water and heat for the whole complex. Right. So I'm expecting that'll probably happen, but who cares? Because in our complex, the heater doesn't even work at all anyways. And
can't lose anything if you didn't have it in the first place.
Exactly. So I've been calling the office to be like, can somebody come look at my heater? And of course they never reply. We've had to pay via like cashier's checks rent because they were like, actually, we're just going to change our payment system, but we're going to take 6 months to do it. So we've been doing that for like 6 months. And they started like the new like online payment system, and the amount in it, I was like, there's no way this is actually what we owe. And so I went into the office. 3 different people gave me multiple different numbers for what I owed for rent. And I was like, no, I need an actual answer. Yeah. And so then I had to sit in the manager's office for like 20 minutes while she tried to figure it out. And she didn't even add in the water because she's like, well, the water, the cost of the water won't hit until tomorrow. And I was like, the rent is due today. So if I pay that tomorrow, it'll be late, right? She was like, yeah. And I was like, but you need to find out what I owe today.
I need to know. Like, I will pay you. Just tell me what the number is.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. So I just am like mad about like everything that they have control over that doesn't matter. Like they don't need to have control over. Obviously, rent is not a direct thing, but like also like the heating system. And also now they are now, if we want to park anywhere in our complex and have an uncovered spot, then or covered, doesn't matter. We now have to submit all of our vehicle information to this random third party, a copy of our insurance, of our vehicle insurance, and a copy of our lease, and any parking addendum if you do have a covered spot. And they rejected mine for some reason. And when I went to the office and I was like, so why is it like this? She was like, oh, I don't even know. I haven't even looked at it. And I was like, you're the manager.
Is this not your job?
They're just like making arbitrary rules.
Yeah.
And I'm just so mad about it. And then on top of that, I was just telling Lewis before we started recording that all of my technology is updating against my will. And I just am mad about all these things that other people shouldn't have any power in my life over.
Right.
And they just do what they want anyways.
I should get to decide when I update my computer and phone, not you.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't want to update Zoom. And I've been saying that forever. And then today Zoom was like, we're going to update now against your will. And I was like, dang it. My phone did this to me a couple days ago. Last week, my entire computer did it, which I didn't even know was possible. So
I hate that.
Infuriating. What if I want to have a system that runs slower? Like
I know.
It's my decision.
Sometimes they change things and I'm like, I know you're going to change things and I don't want it to change. So don't update me.
Yep. And they're like, joke's on you. You actually have no choice.
I know. They're like, you can postpone it, but on a random day that we choose, we will actually force it on you.
Yeah. So I'm just like really mad about like things and people having authority over any area of my life right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, you all do badly at having authority over my life. And I never gave you authority.
Yeah. So. You suck at it. And I did not consent to this. So please give it back.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm like, I don't even know if it's legal for them to ask for a copy of my vehicle insurance. I feel
that's
like
weird.
I
I would understand maybe if they
have
wanted to know
to.
the license plate. So they're like, okay, if we ever
Yeah.
need to like check.
Exactly.
But insurance and
Insurance,
stuff,
that's the thing.
weird.
Like I've had to like do the license stuff before.
Yeah.
They already have that information for one. And the fact that the manager had no idea what I was talking about. And I was like, this is your
talk
sister.
to each other.
Ridiculous. And then I also had emailed her like 6 times to be like, please confirm that you have received my non-renewal notice, to say we're not going to be in the apartment complex. So if you don't give your non-renewal notice in time, they can be like, well, you still have to pay through the end of your lease because you didn't tell us 60 days in advance. So she wouldn't reply to any of my emails, which is largely why I went down there. And I was literally like, can somebody just reply with the word confirm to confirm that you have seen it? And she's like, well, actually you have to sign this paper. And I was like, great, give me the paper, I'll sign it. And she's like, it's not exactly 60 days. It's supposed to be, it doesn't matter. It's at least 60 days, but she would not accept it. She would not let me turn it in until this Friday, which is exactly 60 days. And I was like, it's like they're trying to trip people up.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like they're trying to catch people on technicalities.
Yeah, like they are. Like I know for a fact that none of what's in our like new portals is correct, because ours was so off. Like if I had paid that, it would have been like, you still owe us a bunch of money, but you never paid it. So it would have been like an unpaid debt, which is awful. So they're just, I know everyone in this complex who doesn't go bang on the door and then sit in the office with the manager for 20 minutes is going to be so screwed over.
Yeah.
So I'm mad. And my last apartment complex was really bad too. They tried to say that my husband wasn't on the lease. And I was like, you gave him a parking pass and a key. Oh, ridiculous. Anyways, I'm mad about apartments, but I don't have to be for much longer, hopefully, because hopefully this house thing will all work out. But
your lemon tree.
With the lemon tree, and it's got a bunch of magnolia trees. There's also like a pear tree and a plum tree, I think, and a pecan tree. So
cool.
Yeah. Anyways, it's all very exciting.
That's
but those are all my complaints for the week, from my shoulder to people that I just don't believe should have any authority over my life in any way.
Yeah.
Beyond what I have already agreed to.
Yeah. I'm just mad at like the structure of the human jawbone. So, like, why does it
same?
Why?
They were like, when I went to the dentist, they like super grossly described it to me. They're like, so you have like a gum flap sitting on top of your teeth. And I was like, oh, what?
Like what?
They're like, because your tooth is actually like mostly in your jawbone, there's just a little bit of it sticks out of the jawbone. My gums tried to grow over top of it, but of course there's nothing to attach to. So it's just a gum flap that sits atop my teeth, apparently. And I'm like, that's disgusting. Thanks for telling me.
Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, they're like, we can cut through your jawbone. And I'm like, how much will that be? And they're like, way more than you can afford. Right. I was like, awesome.
Great. Thanks for telling me all that and then telling me I can't afford to get it fixed.
Seriously. It was crazy. I could tell she looked so uncomfortable when I was like, and how much is this going to be? And I was like, I can't afford that. And she looked so uncomfortable. And I'm thinking, can anyone afford this?
Yeah. What is your salary that you can afford to pay $3,500 for?
Yeah. Just like the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Maybe I can save up for that. But by the time I have that saved up, I'm going to have to go back and have all the stuff done again. So crazy. Anyways. And I've been gesticulating wildly in my fury and my shoulder hurts more. I'm mad at all the system. Down with the system. Anarchy. I also just read Legend by Marie Lu. And it's kind of like all about like down with the system. And I'm like, this is my vibe. And today this is my feeling.
That series is absolutely an Ash vibe.
Yeah, it really is. It so is. On that note, we want to move into book recs.
Yeah. Is that your book rec?
Yes, I guess it is my book rec. It's a pretty fast read. So yeah.
I've read, it's a trilogy and I've read them all and they're really good and you're going to like them.
Yay.
What did I read this week? Again, I read nothing because I've been writing. Yeah. Which is awesome. And I can't do both at once, as we now know, because I also shouldn't watch movies while writing because they stress me out for no reason. But I do have library books that are ready to be read at some point. My plan is to get through this edit, talk about a little later, and then after that I can read. Yeah.
That's
Separate
awesome.
the two in my head.
That's fun. I realized I am at the point where I don't know how to not even take a break. And it's not prioritize my time, because basically I was just getting really overwhelmed this week. Also, I was going to say, I'm sorry. I feel like I didn't text you back or email you back, I was in a very deep depression for several days this week.
Oh no.
And so I've been trying to address that and figure out why.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it was largely because I just had so much going on all the time that like I was at the point where like I would maybe have 2 hours a day left at the end of the day before bed. And that includes my time to like cook, shower, and do whatever chores I didn't do. So it's just not a lot of time. And that's just not my vibe. And so I was, people like to be like, everybody has time. You just don't prioritize it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to literally write out everything that I do every day or weekly. And I'm just going to see what I can just like knock off that it is not necessary. I did everything. I put everything on the list. Everything is necessary. There was nothing I could take off. I wrote down sewing, but I haven't even sewed in months because I haven't had time. And so that also, so it's also sad that I had to mark off the one thing that I also don't even get to do because I don't really have time. So anyways, so that was upsetting. But I also realized I think I've been like really stressed because I haven't had time to write. And that's how I process things. I'm not really a verbal processor, which probably sounds contradictory for somebody who has 2 podcasts. But I really don't process emotions well verbally. I need to write them out first and then I can talk about them. So I think also I really haven't written like a big quantity of anything in probably like a year or more. So for that entire year or more, I've just been literally not just not writing, but not processing anything. And so all of a sudden it just hit me a few days ago and I was like, I can't move. I'm so upset. Like it was awful. So I try to like figure out some ways to like try and make more space for writing in my life again. Javi's going to cook dinner a couple times a week. And I've decided even if that's like really the only thing I could think of to like make more time. And he's like, I can do all the chores. And I was like, but I kind of like doing chores. Like, and so on days when I'm really busy, I'm just going to be like, hey, can you do the chores today? And I'm going to try and like, let him do more of that. But I think at the very least, even though it's not very much time on those 2 nights a week when he cooks, maybe even just only like an hour each, maybe I'll try and do some writing. I hate only having an hour. I feel like I can't get anything done in an hour, but maybe that's better than nothing. I don't know.
I know some people talk about how you need to be disciplined about it and just write for 20 minutes. I'm like, I can't get anything done in 20 minutes. It takes me 20 minutes to focus and get into the mood.
Exactly. Kendall said something about like having a half hour to write the other day. And I was like, in half an hour, I can just reacquaint myself with what I wrote last time.
Right.
So it's literally it. And I have to do that every time I sit down to write, even if it was like just a day apart. So so basically in this like new scenario of twice a week, I'll get to write. And that's if I'm disciplined enough to not watch TV for that hour because I'm tired. Then I will be able to reacquaint myself for half an hour and then write something new for half an hour.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely feel that because like at the beginning of January, I feel like I was really low and I was in a really weird place. And I was like, is this depression? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then I, like when I got that just really sudden urge to write, I just went immediately sky high. I was like, this is great. This is the best feeling. And now I feel like I'm kind of middling out. So I'm like, I feel like I'm going low, but I'm not. I'm just going back to normal.
Yeah.
So it's higher than where I was at the beginning of January, but it's lower than where I was 2 days ago. And so I'm like, this feels bad, but I know it's good.
Yeah.
So, I think that's part of why I was so anxious watching the movie is because I was just like processing something that wasn't me and my writing stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, oh yeah.
When you really get into the flow, reading something from anyone else is kind of like
it's jarring.
Yeah, because you're so used to what you have been writing. I think I'm also like so intimidated by this book because I think it has the potential to be my best book. Right. So I'm really intimidated by it. And I'm also trying to write in third person, which is not natural for me, but I don't think I can write the story. I don't think it'll be as good of a story told from first person. So I have to do third person and I don't know how. And I also have to read a whole book every week, which is kind of like, I tend to be the same as you where like, I'm either reading or writing. Doing both is very hard for me, but I also have to figure out how to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about, everyone's like, life is a balancing act. And I'm like, okay, that's the thing I'm worst at. Like, exactly. How do I do this?
Honestly, no, girl, but I'm going to send you this sermon that I listened to today from Bridgetown Church. If you guys are not churchy people, I'm still going to say this because this is still useful. It's about how hurry is like the enemy of peace. And so of course, we're all so stressed out all the time. And so it's not even about making more time in your schedule, although that's great if you can. It's just about how oftentimes it's not that our external environment. It's not that our internal environment is a reflection of our external environment. It's that
Mm-hmm.
our external environment tends to be a reflection of how we are on the inside. So if we're feeling like really hurried or really urged to be productive on the inside, we'll kind of create a schedule, a daily life for ourselves that reflects that. So it was just a lot about like how to like reset it. This was also like weirdly the perfect sermon because I had literally kind of come to this conclusion the day before.
Yeah, I love when that happens. When you're like, crazy. Confirmation. This is exactly what I needed.
It was exactly confirmation and put into way better words than I could have. And I literally burst into tears 3 times, which was also nice because I'd been like extremely depressed for days, but I couldn't cry. And I was just kept thinking I'm not much of a crier, but I was just so upset. I thought if I could just cry, surely I'd feel better because at least when you stop crying, you feel better than when you were crying.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. And I broke into tears like 3 times listening to this sermon. And I was just like,
good.
I don't care if you're religious or not. Everybody needs to hear this because this is amazing. So anyways, I'll send it to you. But it was from Bridgetown Church. I think it was like, they're doing a series on prayer right now. And it was the second one about like this peace or stillness or something. I don't remember, but it was so nice. Like I probably need to listen to it every day.
Yeah, my pastor did a sermon I guess it was a couple months ago, but I really only processed it recently about how like a lot of times the problem is that you're too focused on yourself and you have to look a little more outward and be like, well, it's not always about me and it's not really about, what I want and what I'm doing all the time. And so that's like a good perspective for me because sometimes I'm so introspective that I have to remember like, okay, you're allowed to get out of your own head sometimes and you probably should.
Yeah. It's that thing of when your face is too close to the fence, sometimes you don't see the fence because you're like literally looking through the fence.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
I love that analogy. And I, of course, could always forget about that analogy when I need to remember it.
Then you remember it like 3 months after it would have been useful. And you're like, okay, I have to remember that next time.
Exactly. So that's what I'm just really hoping I hang on to this like newfound, if I can just find a way to be unhurried, even if all the stuff that's on my list is still on my list, how can I don't have to be hurried about it. Like, I don't have to feel like how quickly or effectively I complete those things every single time is a reflection of my worth. It's not. Right. So I just need to be like as unhurried about it as possible. Yeah. And as I can knock things out of my schedule a little bit, I'm going to stop trying to take on new things because
that would be
I'm
good.
Always like another project. Yeah, I can do that. No, I can't.
No, we're going to press pause on that.
Yeah. But if one more person says, you just have to prioritize your time, I'm going to slap them.
It doesn't always work. It works sometimes, but not for everyone.
Sometimes it's true, but it's not always. That's the thing. And there were times in my life where it was a problem of prioritizing and sometimes it's not. And that's when I've hit how overwhelmed I've been lately because I looked at it and I was like, there's literally nothing I can get rid of. It's all necessary. So anyway, so I'm going to try and make more room for unnecessary things that I like. Like I'm going to take a bath after this. Usually I take a really quick hurried shower in the morning after I work out. I think now I'm just going to rinse off in the morning so I don't smell and I'm not self-conscious all day. But then I'm going to take like a nice relaxing bath in the evening and just take 30 minutes. And surely I can do that. Right. So yeah. Anyways, none of that was book rec stuff. I just wanted to say it because
that works.
That's been my life this week. But also the reading Legend by Marie Lu today was fun. It was good. I got to process a lot of my anger about like authoritarian culture. Yeah. Rebellion.
Rebellion.
I really liked it. Also, there's like a plague and stuff going on. And I was like, this book came out years and years ago.
Yeah.
But this is so relevant. Like it feels like somebody wrote it about today. I was like, this is funny. Conspiracy theorists probably love this book.
Probably.
I.e. me. I'm not a full-on conspiracy theorist, but I think a lot of fiction writers are a little bit conspiracy theoristy.
We have to be. We have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's our word of the week?
Oh, Divagate. Which is Divagate, and it's spelled like Divagate. Like, like a scandal in the White House or something, like Divagate, but it's Divagate.
Divagate.
And it means to stray or digress, typically in a literary sense. I think it literally means to wander. So
it literally means to wander.
Literally means literally it means to wander, but typically like what was my example? I had an example here. It was something about
use
Yeats.
it in a sentence.
I know. I had to look it up. Yeats divagated into Virgil's territory only once. That's the internet's version. So it's kind of like if you go into
Something that's not, maybe I have
like
one.
something that's not your
Victor Hugo
purview.
divagates into Parisian architecture.
Yeah.
For way too much
in the Hunchback of Notre
Hunchback of Notre
Dame.
Dame. Yeah. And apparently in Les Mis, he divagates into the Parisian sewer system in way more detail than is necessary or desired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, no one needed this.
No one
You're going off topic, Hugo. Can we come back?
Nobody asked for it. Nobody enjoyed it.
Yeah. Please come back to Quasimodo.
Yeah, please. He's like, just one more thing. Just one more thing about Parisian architecture. And then just maybe one or two more things after that. Yeah.
It's kind of like, is it Melville on whales? Like all the types of whales in Moby Dick?
Does he do that? I haven't read Moby Dick, but I would bet he does.
Yeah, it's like every other chapter is like, and here's another cool kind of whale. And we're like, is this the white whale? No, why are we talking about this?
That's so that's annoying. I am noticing a trend here of these are all classical male authors. I wonder,
think they just wanted to write nonfiction, but there was no money in it, so they just wrote it into their fiction.
It feels like they really just wanted a platform to like talk about their thing that they're really into, and they're like, if I put it into a fiction book,
I'll get people talking.
I can make them read it. I can make them.
People will suddenly really care about whales. Yeah, and everyone was like, "Nah, man."
They're like, "No, we care about the story itself."
Yeah,
that's funny.
Divagate.
Divagate. I can definitely use that one in writing. That's a good one.
Pretty good one. Yeah.
Well, do you want to introduce our theme for today?
Sure. So we're going to talk about how to use all 5 senses in your writing.
Yay! Yes. Yeah. This is so exciting because I used to be like really obsessed with this practice, which is, I mean, I think it's something that should be in every book to an extent, but it also has a lot to do with your voice as an author, like how much you include. Like I noticed for an example, like the legend books, my Marie Lou are really, people love them and they're good, but she really doesn't do that much at all. Whereas Serpent and Dove by Shelby McCurran is one of the best examples I've seen of this lately. Like you can her book literally starts with a sense. It says magic has a smell or something like that, or like the smell of magic or something, which is really interesting, first of all, because like that's not a smell any of us can relate to. Right. But she uses the senses throughout the whole book. And it's it's really important to remember that I think people often think that including like your senses, like taste, touch, smell, hearing, sight, or whatever is like part of the setting. And it is part of the setting. But I think more importantly, you can use that to evoke certain emotions because different smells, different colors, different sounds evoke different feelings, or maybe they evoke nostalgia, or maybe they evoke discomfort, or there's like, I mean, you could try and, display any emotion using the senses. Right. And so I really think that that's where it comes in the most handy. It's great for setting, I guess. I mean, it is. And that's kind of more what Tolkien uses it for, is just for setting. Yeah. But Shelby McCurran did it in this way that was so evocative of feeling. And so that's what I'm just like obsessed with. And so I used to, when I was like a younger writer, I would just like sit down whenever I had to be in a crowded place and open my like tiny little like Acer mini laptop. And I would just write out everything that I heard, everything that I smelled. Nice. And I would just like go into that as a practice, which I haven't done in a long time. And it kind of shows because my writing lately has not really included much of that, which is ridiculous because I think that that's such an important part of writing that we just don't see that much. So I need to get a really good strategy
to do that. Just like on your downtime when you're, standing in line somewhere, to even just thinking about it, just think like, okay, what am I hearing right now? What am I smelling right now? What am I feeling right now? Like touch.
Exactly.
Tangibly.
I think of all of like the writing practices you can do this. That's the easiest. This is the easiest one I've ever come across because it's like you said, like you don't even have to write it down. Like you can just be like waiting in line at the store. You could be waiting at the DMV. You could be whatever. You could be waiting for your coffee in the parking lot. Like, and you can run through all of those things. And it makes such a difference because as soon as you start to train your brain to recognize those things wherever you are, you start like absorbing all of them. So then whenever you write a scene where you need that, or you need to evoke that emotion that you were feeling, or you want to use those senses to build a setting, you have it all just like backlogged in your brain, even if you have a bad memory, because there's senses tap into your memory in a way that nothing else does. Like we all know I've got like a goldfish memory. This is not a joke. I literally have often an attention span that is less than a goldfish. They can remember things for 5 minutes. I often don't.
You're like, goldfish are smarter.
Yeah. And I've been told by therapists that my memory is damaged. So like, I really don't remember anything, but I do remember senses. And even if you don't remember where you experienced them first, you always remember how you felt. Like it brings back the feeling. So I just think that including the senses in your writing is one of your most powerful tools for building just a completely immersive experience.
Yeah, I agree. And also like kind of on that memory point, if you're trying to include flashbacks, that could be a good kind of trigger for that. So like maybe your character smells something or hears something, and that's what triggers the memory, so it doesn't feel like it's coming out of nowhere.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's true. Because like especially smells, I feel like, for memories.
I think that's a scientific thing, that smell is the most closely associated with memory.
Yeah, it's true. And there's Helen Dunmore did this too, at least in the Ingo series. In the first book, there's something where she did it differently, where she took a memory that the character had and later equated the smell of something in that scene to her feelings later. So it wasn't like a universal thing. Like the smell of fresh rain can make you feel refreshed or drowsy, you know, like there's, you can like, you know, a lot of people have similar feelings about some smells, but this was a really specific one. And it came back like again and again throughout the series. And it was just so interesting and so real to think that that's how the character felt. Because like her parents, when she was younger, she remembers them getting into a fight in the kitchen, and they had mushrooms cooking on the stove and they didn't notice because they were in a fight. And so basically like she and her brother came into the kitchen and it stopped the fighting because they didn't want to fight in front of the kids, but she watched her dad like scrape the burned mushrooms into the trash. So now like fights to her smell like burnt mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so she's like, now the air smells like burnt mushrooms, or the smell of burnt mushrooms came back to me.
Even if it's not there, it's that she's feeling it because that's like the environment that she's in.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one where like you can even if you're like, well, I don't know what emotions that this smell would evoke, or I don't know how I would express this feeling in a smell. That's where, if your character had an experience where something happened like that and there was a smell like that, you can use that. It doesn't have to be a universal experience. And that's literally just with smell. You can do the same thing with sound, with touch, with sight. People don't do touch very much because it's kind of hard to, I feel like, talk about, but it is really important, like to talk about different textures and stuff.
Yeah. Because I think touch is often always used in like the makeout scenes and like the kiss scenes, but then it's never used anywhere else.
Their skin was hot under my fingers, and you're like, okay,
you've never noticed anything tactile before.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
So you do want to make that consistent, I think. I mean, there are certain situations that you don't want to go into so much detail. Like, I don't think you need to do a checklist and do all 5 in every scene. Sometimes people say that because there are scenes where like they're not reasonably tasting anything because they're not eating, or you know, it would be weird to talk about what they're seeing if their eyes are closed or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think people often describe the sight, because I think this is partially because we're so into movies and TV that in society we forget the non-auditory and visible. We forget about taste, touch, and smell.
Yeah, which is why I think those are the most effective, because you naturally include sight. So I mean, you can play with it a little bit, like include things people often forget to talk about, like lighting and stuff. You can, you know, include descriptions of, because that's not always included, but it's kind of natural. And even the auditory, you maybe like
dialogue,
speaking, because dialogue, exactly. But there's still the background sound, so you can like pull out like the background stuff more from those. But really, like taste and touch and smell are so underutilized. And I do think like definitely you don't want to include them all on the same page. You can make it like a soft goal to include them all in one chapter, but if you're gonna have to stretch for it, don't include it if it doesn't need to be, if it doesn't add. Never include something that doesn't add, whether it's senses or anything else. But I think you can reasonably include all of those in a chapter if it's the right chapter, but not all on the same page, because that's just a sensory overload.
It's true. I think it's a good rule of thumb to kind of think about at least including maybe one that isn't sight or sound, or going more in depth into the one of those in a way you wouldn't normally. So like not necessarily all 5, but at least one. Cause like I'm thinking it's kind of like thinking like it's going to rain outside. So I'm thinking of like a thunderstorm. You can describe how the air feels instead of necessarily lightning.
Feels tingly.
Or something like that. And you can describe the thunder, but then maybe there's also like a certain taste in the air or a smell in the air. And so you want to include that to kind of get the scene really set.
So it's super true. And I mean, you can even like say that for one book you're gonna focus more on one sense. Like I still think include them all, but like back to Shelby Mahurin's, she does a lot of scent stuff because she starts with the scent thing, and so she kind of focuses on that. But you could do the same thing with sounds, even if it's just background noise, or with taste, or with touch. So it's not bad at all to like pick. You do want to include them all in the book, but like if you want to like really focus on one, and that's the one that you include more often, that can be a great way to carry symbolism through your book.
Yeah, well, I was thinking too, it can be a good way to do foreshadowing. Like we talk about red herrings and foreshadowing. If there is something connected to a scent, like as your plot twist or whatever, just focus a lot on scent throughout the whole book. And then that's going to trigger some people are going to be like, we're talking a lot about, it smells like lavender or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that can come around. It doesn't, your foreshadowing doesn't have to be a conversation or a physical object. It can be just kind of a vibe, and scent is kind of a vibe more than anything else.
It's true. Well, with the senses, you can put things into not even words. You can bring emotions and sensations into existence by describing the senses that you can't do with words. Like you literally can never, like I can say like the air feels kind of tingly outside before a storm, and you can kind of know what that feels like, but I can never actually describe the physical feeling of that tingliness in the air. So it's just drawing out those internal inherent feelings that everybody has. It's like causing like a physiological reaction in your readers by using that, which is just something you can't do without, like you could describe it and be like, I don't even know, the air felt weird, like the storm was coming, which is still kind of a sense. I mean, it's still kind of,
it's kind of bad writing, but
it's kind of bad writing, but you could, I guess, or something like more like there was a thunderstorm outside. That's not gonna, it's literal. It's, useful, but it's not going to evoke any kind of physiological memory in your readers. Whereas if you talk about like the tingly air, the air felt heavy with moisture, like whatever it is, I'm thinking of obviously like Texas storms, which usually there's a lot of humidity and sometimes the sky turns green because there's a tornado. So the air tends to feel tingly and really heavy and damp here before a storm, but maybe storms somewhere else feel really different. Maybe the air feels really crisp. I don't know if you live somewhere cold. I don't know, obviously. So
I think it's like describe it as unliterally as you can, right? Like try not to say there's a thunderstorm. Tell me like what's going on that will make me understand that there's a thunderstorm.
Yeah, if you can make your readers feel like there's a thunderstorm on the way without ever even saying that there's a storm on the way, or even never even showing that the storm hits, maybe it's just suddenly there's water everywhere and it's raining or something, that is so much more powerful than telling them. That's I mean, I feel like that's kind of an Ernest Hemingway thing to do, where like the whole iceberg method, like in a way, I don't know how big he was into senses. I don't really remember it, but his whole thing was like, you want to write so that it's an iceberg. So there's like the top layer that you see that like the readers get firsthand. And there's everything else, which is like everything else that's all of like the sub language, like the sub story, and also like all of the feelings that you evoke with that, just the top of the iceberg. So
with as little as possible.
Exactly. So I think, and people aren't going to like me for saying this, but we just read Fellowship of the Ring on That Pretentious Book Club. And I think where Tolkien could have been more successful, he's a great writer. I love his world building. It's literally unparalleled. And his story is a great adventure. It's a great fantasy adventure. This is not a diss on him at all. But I do think like the one thing he could have done was include more senses and take more away that didn't have to be in there. I feel like
replace all the trees with some weather or
some weather
smells.
Or something or smells. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he did lots of songs, but he did more sound, I think, probably than other senses. But I think he could have included more of what had to be in there to make you feel different things. It just always feels like really like reading a story to me. It doesn't feel as immersive as some other things. Which is fine. I think a lot of people don't really care. Like I didn't think that Legend was that immersive, but it's still a great book that people love. But if you really want an immersive story, you can't leave out the senses.
Because there is kind of a difference between like an action scene or an action book and something that's very like evocative with senses and stuff. This is a weird question. Do you think there's a taste to adrenaline? Can you taste
that
adrenaline?
depends. I guess that depends on the person. You could say that a character tastes
No, because
something.
I can taste it.
Can
Can
you?
you? Do you feel that?
No.
No, okay, because I thought this was a normal thing. And so I started talking about it once, and everyone was like, what are you talking about? You can't taste adrenaline. I'm like, yes, I can.
Well, inevitably, well, that's a great thing to include in your book because
Yeah,
inevitably some people do. And then those of us
exactly.
who don't or haven't noticed that we do might notice it
Mhm.
in the future, or just it's just, it's just even more evocative and interesting. What do
Yeah,
you
and
think
so
adrenaline tastes like?
it's kind of like a metallic chemical taste, if that makes sense. It's kind
Interesting.
of like
I was
blood
gonna
combined
say
with,
like copper. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like blood, but it's kind of like what hand sanitizer would taste like if it wasn't gross, if that makes any sense.
It's got really sharp alcohol taste.
Kind of, yeah.
Really like astringent alcohol taste.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
So I mean,
I don't have any taste when my adrenaline hits.
okay.
I suddenly feel like I'm made out of like wire. Like I feel like
Mhm.
very strong in the moment and I get
Mhm.
like laser focused. Like
Yeah.
I can do anything, but there's no room for anything other than what has to happen in the situation to make it better. So
Yeah.
like it just becomes all business. But
Mhm.
so for me, it's more like a physical sensation. I feel like everything tighten up.
Yeah, I often don't know if I'm like that I'm excited or that I'm scared until I taste it. And then I'm like, something's going wrong.
That's funny. I can tell because everything in me, like, I almost like think my posture gets better. Like everything like stiffens and straightens, and I just like focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider, that they're, depending on your character, they're going to feel things like fear differently.
They are.
And things like excitement differently.
Yeah.
And maybe they're very similar, or maybe they're very different.
And I don't think you ever really need to worry about whether or not it's relatable. I think some people get caught up in that too. And they're like, well, what if I use like the imagery, that the language that I want to use to describe it, but other people don't see it that way? Definitely write it anyways, because first of all, someone somewhere is going to relate to it. And if not, maybe people just haven't thought of it that way. And even if they still don't relate to it after that, it's still interesting to see how other people experience things. So yeah. And it says a lot about you or the character or whatever, depending on how you've described it. So like a character that tastes copper when their adrenaline hits or whatever, that's really interesting. Like that's really interesting imagery.
Yeah. And as long as it's like accessible, like you're not describing it in terms that can't be understood, it doesn't have to be relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are two different things, right? Relatable versus accessible. Like if I can understand what you're saying, even if I've never felt it before, that's fine. Yeah. But I have to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of why people don't include senses as much, is because of the difference between accessibility and relatability, because a lot of people don't walk around thinking about their senses all the time. Like most of us don't actively, unless you're doing like an exercise like we were talking about, you're not actively thinking about like what you smell or taste or feel on like just a normal day, normal activities. So, but it is something that we all do. So even just the experience of experiencing sensations, that's accessible. Then that's as much relatability as you need, is the fact that we all experience senses. So you're good to go. That's it.
It's true. I got really into candles a couple years ago. And so I did very intensive research into scents and how to describe them and like all that kind of stuff. And it's really hard because if it's not visual, it's very hard to describe like tastes and that kind of stuff, because bland things like, oh, it tasted good or it smelled good isn't like a great description.
Yeah, no.
But if you have a very particular like scent in mind, like a pine tree or whatever, that can be hard to describe.
Yeah. But if you say it smells like picking out a Christmas tree with my family, that's a way to do it. And that's the way that even if you haven't actually done that with your family, you can imagine what that would, or you could be like, the air smelled like the Hallmark store at Christmas season. That's obviously like a kind of like cinnamony, appley smell. Like there's some things that people can imagine even if they haven't experienced it. So you don't even have to always be like, how do I describe this scent in a literal way? You can be like in an experiential way.
Right. And like you're always saying, people are going to get different things out of that. So if you say it's like picking out a Christmas tree, some people might get cinnamon apples, some people might get pine, some people might get hot
chocolate. Like
yeah. But that's okay, because unless it's very specific what you're trying to say, like, it's your characters specifically smelling this. Like it's okay if readers get something a little different as long as a scene is set.
Yeah. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you specifically want your character to smell pine because the scent of pine is going to come back later and it needs to be very clear and that's why you're including it, then obviously you want to be specific. But if you're including the scents because you want to evoke an emotion or an experience or something, then you can be as like weird and figurative about it as you want to be.
True. So I do this only with scents. Maybe I should do it with other things. But I have like this whole document in my computer of like different ways to describe scents, right? So if I'm stuck, I can just look at it and be like, oh, okay, this is the word. And so that's something you can do if you're confused. Just one day, just take some time to like write out all of the possible words you can use to describe stuff or the different kinds of scents and tastes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that I think if you want to get creative with it, like if you want to say pine, you don't need to find some weird creative word for pine.
Yeah.
I think the creative part comes with like the way that you structure the sentence around it. Right. So you don't want to make it so vague that they can't get the point, but be more creative in like your sentence structure. And that's how you're going to evoke more emotion with simpler terms.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it's true. You could even combine them and be like, the memories of holidays past or whatever family traditions like came back to me with the scent of pine. You can, if you want to be like, if you want to use both, you can. It's so, I don't know why we don't see it more because including the senses is really such a natural thing. If you think about it, I mean, it's so natural in our everyday lives that we don't even like clock it because it's just the most natural thing to do, which is why I think being more intentional about it, just like when you go places and it just is a practice, you know, is I think making yourself more aware of what you're naturally doing is just makes it easier to include it in your books. But it is the most natural human thing to do is to experience things through your senses. So
yeah, that's true. So it's important to include. You don't want to abandon it. You can have different degrees of like how in depth are you going to make this sensory description, but it does have to be there in some sense.
Yeah. And it has a lot to do with your voice as an author and also even like what kind of genre you're writing. Cause like if you're writing a book that's primarily action, you really probably don't want to take the time to really get into all the senses all the time because
they're just
it slows things down. Yeah. Just like little brief bursts here and there. Whereas a book that's all about evoking nostalgia is probably going to have a lot of sensory stuff in it and you can go into more detail. And even in action books and like slower scenes, you can do that a little bit, but it's just not the same. So it depends on the book and it also depends on your voice as an author. Like some authors just don't. And that's not wrong. I just really like it. And I think a lot of people, I just think it's a missed opportunity. So it's not like it's the wrong choice. It's just, it's just a missed opportunity. So
yeah. I think you want to make sure that you're keeping in the same tone of your book, even if it's like a primarily action book, you don't want your down scenes to become slow. You still want them to keep high pace. And so you're still going to be more choosy about which things to describe.
You have to be more specific. Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing a, evocative, nostalgic one, even in scenes that are faster paced, you're going to want to take a little bit of time to describe things in some more detail.
Exactly. And you also have to kind of figure out like, what do you want your trademark to be as an author? Like if you want to go on and do it professionally, if you're just doing it for a hobby, it doesn't really matter to establish like a voice. And of course, from book to book, you're going to have a slightly different voice, even if you do want to be like a published author. And that's fine. It's because every book is slightly different. But I think like every author has certain things that they do better. Like, I will say, God, what's her name? A Court of Thorns and Roses, Sarah J. Maas. Yeah. She has some very specific elements to her writing style that are in all of her books, even if, they're in different degrees to each book. And that's why people who like her tend to like all of her stuff. I'm not one of them. I like Throne of Glass and I didn't like Akatar, but that wasn't for her voice as much as it was for plot. But I do think you just want to like, as you're crafting your reputation as an author, and it can change constantly too. So you don't want to box yourself in. Like as you grow as an author, your voice is going to change. But if you like to include the senses or you want to include the senses more, like maybe that's just something you make a priority in all your books, whether it's an action book and you can only include it kind of in a more limited way, or if you're going to do a book where you can really expand on it more, you just want to make sure it's present. If that's something that you want to be a part of your voice as an author that people recognize, like they could pick up two of your books in different genres and be like, this kind of feels similar. Yeah.
I feel like the author that comes to mind with that is Neil Shusterman. So he wrote like the Scythe books and a bunch of others that, I mean, Everlost and Unwind and stuff. But anyway, I feel like if I picked up any book of his that didn't have his name on it, I would be able to read one paragraph and be like, this is a Schusterman book, because he has such a distinct voice, and it's so like fluid and poetic and stuff. I can't actually think, I don't know, I can't remember how much he uses the senses. I think he uses smell a lot. Maybe that's why I'm remembering it. But I think that's great. And that's something that I want to be able to do. And I think it's just really fun to read when you don't necessarily need their name on the cover to know whose it is.
Yeah. It's nice. It's kind of familiar, but not repetitive in any way. It's just like, I don't know. It's almost like it's almost like you're picking up like a friend instead of a book a little bit. Even though it's a different friend, but you still kind of have an existing relationship with the voice. So it's just, it's not altogether new. It's almost like I was going to say when you watch like a spin-off show, but that's not true because I usually hate spin-off shows. I don't know. It's nice. I think Ted Decker, he's not one of my favorite authors. I know a bunch of people love his stuff, but I will say this for him is his voice is also extremely distinct. Like you can within a page be like, this is Ted Decker. And that's why he is as popular as he is because his writing is so specific and it's very well done. I haven't read him in a few years. Maybe as an adult, I'd like it more if I went back and read it again, but as a kid, I just didn't really like it. But I've picked up his stuff many times and always been like, immediately, that's Ted Decker.
Yeah. So I know who this is.
I definitely know who wrote this. Yeah. And so I'm sure his writing has evolved with time too, because everybody's does. So it's not about like limiting yourself. It's just about defining what's important to you about storytelling and then just making sure that you're consistent with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anything else on senses?
I don't think so. I just highly encourage everybody to just practice, like whether you write it down or not, just the next time, like you're out in public, just go through all the senses real quick. Yeah. And I think you're going to be surprised by how hard it is to even in your head, like think about what you're experiencing because it's so automatic. But I think if we would all make that more of a practice, then I think it would be so much easier, like thousands of times easier to incorporate it into our writing.
Yeah. So it just becomes an instinct to notice it.
Yeah.
I also think if you do find that you struggle with that, just take some time, even if it's over several weeks, to just come up with terms that describe the way that you see things or taste things or whatever, so that you have those ready, so that as you're writing, you don't need to stress about the specific word you're going to use. Just you can go to that document and pick it.
Exactly. And you can look up writers who are really good at using senses as well, like Helen Dunmore and Shelby Mahurin or whoever else, has been recommended to you. And obviously you don't want to use their exact descriptions because everybody experiences senses differently, but even just kind of like seeing how all of the different ways you can describe the senses, it's kind of free. And it kind of gives you like a framework to like begin with, like just to think about how to like jump off starting to do that. So
yeah. So much of writing feels like just knowing things so well that they're internalized and you don't even notice you're doing them anymore.
Yep. That's exactly.
So the senses is one of those. It's like, if you think about it too hard, it's going to come across really unnatural.
Yeah.
And so if you start to think about it, it's going to feel weird and it's going to it, and then it'll just make your writing better.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very true. Yeah, I think that I think being a really big part of being a good writer is just noticing life around you, noticing the senses, noticing people, noticing other people's lives going on, noticing like the emotional connection or disconnect between people. So much of writing, I just think, is being intentional about what you're processing all the time. And then it comes out way more naturally. And also being like intentional about what you take from books, which you're really great at. Obviously, Catherine's Corners minisodes are basically all Carissa going through these books.
I think about it a lot.
I know she does. And being like, okay, what methods can I recreate that this author has used to tell their story the best way possible? So just being really intentional when you read and being really intentional about just everything you're experiencing is, I think, more than any kind of technique is what makes you a really great writer. So we're already doing all that stuff. We're already just inherently processing all that stuff. So all it just takes is a little bit of intentionality and thinking about it, which is nice. It's like, it's something you can add to your to-do list that doesn't take any extra time or and very little extra effort. It's actually kind of fun. So it's like kind of a nice
like
thing.
Ash and you have too much on your plate. This is something you can add without really
definitely do. And you shouldn't feel overwhelming. In fact, it's kind of nice. And I think this is different, but I've also heard that, if you dissociate badly, I have definitely dissociated some people struggle with dissociation a lot. Actually,
I'm very good at it.
Yeah. Going through the senses is actually a really great way to try and break yourself out of it. I used it before with someone who was having like a really bad like attack of dissociation. And I was like, what do you feel on your fingers? What is it? And they said something that was totally not what it is. And I was like, no, look at it with your eyes.
No.
What is it? And then that kind of like snapped them out of it. And I was like, oh, it does work. So that's just, I mean, writing and otherwise, I think we can all benefit from just, especially when we're stressed, like taking a moment to stop and just, what am I tasting? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? What am I feeling? And kind of bring you back to the moment. So yeah. That's my soapbox for the senses in writing and in life.
Yeah. It applies to all kinds of areas.
It does. It definitely, I mean, regardless, it can't hurt. It can only help. So
exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Well, do you have any writing updates for us?
I mean, I'm just editing some more on that same book. It's going much slower than writing it did.
Ain't that the truth?
Yep. And I'm now at 90,000 words. So I've somehow added about 10,000. And I did not expect that to happen. I really thought I would just be like changing some word choices, but I was like, no, I have to explain things a little differently, and it upped my word count.
My first round of editing, I usually add 10 to 20,000 words, which is awful. So then my third round of editing, because I so truly believe in cutting things out, is to try and take it back down to like 60,000 to 75,000, which is so annoying, especially because I just made it harder for myself with the second edit, but it's just the way it goes. Oh well.
I mean, sometimes I add things on like the second edit that later is really important, and I'm glad I added it, but you have to like add and then cut and then add and then cut, and there's no shortcut.
Nope. Editing is definitely the most time consuming part of writing.
Yep.
For sure. Because you can't skip any of it. Like if you needed to add it, you needed to add it. And then you're going to have to go back through and decide what else you can afford to get rid of. But you kind of have to do all of it.
Yeah. And like in my head, this is such an 80,000 word book. And I'm like, part of me is just like not accepting that it could be 90,000, because I don't know how much this plays into it, but part of me wonders if some of the reason I keep getting rejected by agents is because my book is the one I've been querying is really long. It's 95,000. My gosh, I just wonder how much that plays into it. I know it's fantasy, so it's allowed to be longer, but it's a debut and they tend to not want those to be as long. And so if this one could 80,000, I feel like that would really help, but
I feel like
80,000
is acceptable because it's basically 75,000, which is the average for a young adult, even young adult fantasy. So, and then you can get really long with the next one. My current, maybe that's why I reeled in the interest of a few agents with the last book I was querying, but it is at like 85,000 words. Like it is closer to 90,000. Yeah. Which, I'm sure I can get rid of some stuff. I'm so torn right now because this is where I'm at with writing. I realized I really, to give myself the shot at having the kind of like life work experience that I want to have, I have to have more books to query, but I have to have the time to query them. But to make myself the time to write and query them would mean I can't survive because I have to do all the other things. And so it's this awful catch-22, but I have to prioritize somehow, like writing this book to query. But then part of me is like, is it more time consuming to write a book from scratch and edit it, or to go back and try to do a super heavy edit of an existing book? Because really heavy edits where you try and redo a bunch, I think can actually be more time consuming than writing a new book. But I know
changing what's already there is harder than writing it.
It is, exactly. And so I know people are interested in it. So I don't know, but I also think people would be interested in this other book. So I'm part of me, aside from the fact that I have no time, is also paralyzed by the importance of this decision of, do I choose to devote all this time and energy, by all this time, I mean, to the rest of what very little time I have every day left to writing a new book? Or is it more responsible to devote it to this other thing? So, I don't know.
I think either way, you're going to have to end up doing edits. So you should pick the one that you're most excited about to carry you through the slog that is editing, you know?
It's true. And I literally, as I said, that just hurted my head when we talked about marketable writing the other day, but what we landed on was like, write what you're passionate about, or we talked about like trends or something. And we came back to this conclusion. I need to take my own advice here. Like write what you're passionate about when you're passionate about it, because the inspiration will pass. So that's what I need to do. We're very wise in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I know what I need to do. I'm just so scared I'm going to do it badly. But I want, and also the time problem. Those are my two big obstacles right now, is the lack of time. I'm going to have to learn to write in shorter like bursts. And I have never been good at that ever. That, and then
it's hard.
And it's there's so much new, like my new time constraint is new. Having to write in third person is new. I've also never written a book of this scope before. So it's so stressful. Yeah. I've never been afraid that I'm not good enough as a writer to write something. I've just written, but I'm literally like, am I a good enough writer to tell this story the way it needs to be told? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never had that before.
Gosh. Yeah. That's how I feel about a couple of my other projects. Yeah. And it's kind of paralyzing. You're like, if I feel like I'm not the right person to do this, how do I make myself do it?
Yeah, exactly. I guess I just need to jump. I just need to like, just jump, just get into it.
Yeah. You need to pick one and commit.
Yeah. I think I'm going to pick the new one, and I'm going to commit. And it's scary. And I'm just going to, I guess, get to work on it like 2 hours a week, not even at the same 2 hours, but oh well.
Yeah. Right.
It's really stressful.
Is there anything you can push to the same day so that you can make it 2 hours instead, like on the same day, like not cut anything, but move it around?
I could record and edit one of the podcasts on the same day. And I have done that before. That is the one thing with my schedule. I can sometimes move stuff around. Like a friend invited us to go to their birthday dinner yesterday, which is why we were actually recording on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. Cause I was like, hey, Carissa, can we move this a day? So I do have that kind of flexibility where it doesn't go anywhere. I still have all the same responsibilities for the same amount of time.
Right. You're just shuffling it around.
I can shuffle stuff around. So maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need to shuffle some of my stuff around so that like, at least one of those nights when Hobby's cooking dinner, that I've shuffled some other chores or whatever off my list so that I can have 2 hours instead. And also I do have a little bit of time on the weekends. So I also need to I usually try to use that to decompress because I'm so bad at taking any time for myself during the week. So
does writing stress you out? Like, does it feel like a job you have to get done?
It does when I first start. Once I get into the flow, not at all. It's effortless and it's great. But especially with a new book, like the first like 500 words every time I haven't been writing for a while and I sit down to write is really hard. It feels like a job. I think also because my brain is like, we've been doing work all day. I don't want to work anymore. And it forgets that this is something that we like to do.
Right. I know. Cause I was going to say, for me, it's always like writing is my downtime. And so like, it's the thing I'm excited about. And so I have to like reorient myself to be like, okay, now you have to work at this. Like sometimes I'm really tempted to just skip around to the scenes I really like and reread them. And I'm like, okay, no, now you have to actually put some effort in and some work because it's not just a hobby. So
see, I think I need to take a little bit of your natural instinct. I think it's also why I'm intimidated is I've never just written the scenes that I'm excited about. Like I always write it in order, always. But then that also kind of makes it feel like work because then if I have writer's block, I have no choice but to sit there in the writer's block and just try and manually push through. So maybe those are the moments where it would be, I think I might have more fun writing again if I just let myself write the scenes that I'm excited about instead of having to wait all the way until I write up to the scene. So I'm in this place where I'm like, I really need to reassess how I approach life. Like I'm trying to reassess and just be unhurried. And I think maybe that's my problem too. Maybe that's why I've not been enjoying writing as much is because I'm in a hurry to write through the whole book so I can get to the scenes I want to write instead of doing the unhurried thing and writing what I enjoy. And of course there's a bunch of work that I have to put into it too, but I don't have that problem. I have an overworking problem. So I don't think that's going to be an issue.
We have opposite problems. We just need to even out.
Yeah, exactly. I need
I'll give you some of my relaxation and you'll give me some of your work ethic and we would be great.
We would be perfection. It would just be just constantly books coming out.
Yes.
That's so funny. So this is you can remind me if I'm getting stressed about not being productive enough. Because I'm really trying to live an unhurried life, which is the antithesis of my personality.
Completely changing everything.
It's literally the biggest change I could make in who I am. But I don't think being hurried is a strength. I think it just becomes so ingrained in me. And I don't know. I mean, it makes me productive, but I don't think it makes me happy. And I don't think it makes me positive. Like, I don't think it brings positive things into the world. So
yeah, I think too, sometimes being productive is like, when you're really being productive, it's almost invisible to the people around you.
Yep.
So it can look for a really long time like you're not doing anything. I think this is my problem sometimes where, people are like, well, what do you do? And I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to explain to them that writing is work and that's what I'm doing. And so I'm like, oh, I do nothing. But like, I am doing things, right? And so that's also a difference.
Yeah. People seem to do that. This is why I've stopped to a lot of people say, God, I'm so busy, because they always do the thing where they're like, well, you have time, you just don't prioritize it. And I'm like, okay, well, I get off work when the sun is already down, and that's just my normal job. And then on top of that, I have the podcast, and that none of this includes just like maintaining a life, like with cooking and dishes, chores, seeing people very occasionally, God forbid writing. But they think that the podcast is just something that I do for fun, and I do it and I do it for fun, and I love it, and it adds so much to my life, and that's why I don't want to give it up, and that's why I consider it a necessity. But it also is work. So it's sometimes the things you love are also work, and that's okay. But I think it's the way that we approach work. I just think we need to just not be so hurried, and that's okay. And that's not a reminder everybody needs, but it's definitely a reminder I need.
Every once in a while, at least.
And also deciding that it doesn't matter what people think. Whether people think that your time is well spent or not actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if people recognize that you're being productive or recognize that you actually are really busy. It literally does not matter at all. So
I guess that's probably my problem, because like, not to brag, but I was like, the kid everyone expected to be really successful, because I was like valedictorian and I was straight A for like my whole life and everything. And I think I internalized that a little bit as like, okay, now I need to start proving that I'm still successful. And it's like, I'm not, quote unquote successful, but I am doing things and I feel productive a lot of the time. It's just that there's nothing for me to show people to like prove that. And I don't have to prove that to them, but I feel like I want to,
We all have that one thing. Your thing is that you were supposed to be the successful one. Literally the only compliment that I got for most of my life was that I was productive. So now I'm like, well, if I'm not being productive, I'm worthless, which is not true in any way. So I'm trying to like get back to the truth, which is that it's okay to not be productive all the time. My value does not matter. But it is funny how like that one thing that's such a compliment to you when you're a kid kind of becomes your curse when you get older.
And it's like, I agree with it in the sense that like, that's what I want, but it also puts this pressure on you to do it on a certain time frame.
And I enjoy doing things. Like I'm always going to be, even if I didn't have a job, I would be busy all the time because there's so many things I like to do. But then when it becomes a matter of, if I don't do this, I suck as a person. I've crossed the line, and that's where I've been for a while.
This is the theme of the movie Encanto. And I think that's part of why it stressed me out, because I was like, holy crap, I feel very called out right now.
So many people are saying that they feel called out by Encanto. That's funny. I do need to watch this movie. I keep seeing something about how like the older sister or something is like Luisa, I think. I keep seeing a bunch of people relating to her. And as people talk about it, I'm like, hang on, do I relate to her? I don't know. I haven't seen the movie, but I relate to people's TikToks about her. So it's funny. Well, do we have anything else about books or writing or anything we want to share with peeps?
No, not for me.
Sweet. Not for me either. This has been a lot of thanks to everybody for listening to all of my processing. And thank you, Carissa, for being patient when I did not respond to you for like 4 days. I kept looking at it and being like, but I want to respond to her, but I feel like any response is going to sound depressed and she deserves more than that.
Well, you can text me anyway. I don't care.
I'll try and remember that now. I'm just gonna try and chill. I know. Try and be a more chill person.
Sometimes you feel like you're bothering people with like your text or your feelings. And so you just have to kind of get over that, because most people don't actually mind if you just text them or say something. But I always feel like, gosh, I don't want to bother this person by asking how they're doing.
I know. I know. I do the exact same thing. And it's so silly. But thank you everyone for listening on the podcast. Thank you, Lewis, for listening to me constantly.
Anytime.
So appreciate it. If you guys want some more of our writery madness, you can follow us on the social media. We've got TikTok, Instagram. We are the Scripturian Society. Our TikTok is all fun stuff from Carissa. It's all good writer stuff. Instagram is also all good writer stuff. It's like little like tips and stuff, which is great if you don't have time to listen to like a whole episode every week. You can literally get like the like little streamlined best bits on Instagram, which is, I think, super fun. Carissa does a great job. And I literally, because I forget what I talk about on the pod, I'm like, oh, that is such great advice, Carissa. As if I wasn't literally in the conversation.
As if you weren't part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're a writer, casually or professionally, I think objectively, it's a really fun social media to follow. So I don't know if that's the correct term. It's a social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
not hip with the kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you guys can also go to well, yeah. So I was going to say the wrong thing.
Oh.
But again.
Yeah, I'll go with that
one. If you guys want us to talk about something specific about writing, you can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com, or you can DM us on the soch. Either way, we'll see it. We'll get back to you. We love recommendations because we want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. And if you guys, I don't know, if you're interested in learning more about the pod, or maybe, I don't know, you want some really cool merch, you can go to storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. And we have some really cool Scripturian Society merch on there. It is awesome. And I'm literally just waiting to have a little money in my pocket again. And then like so much merch that I want to buy.
Right. You're like,
spoiler,
here's my list.
We also have to buy our own merch. And I want it so bad. But that stuff's exciting. So go get it. And I can live vicariously through you guys. And then another plea to join us on Patreon. You can join a writing group on there for free. So if you're like, I just want to have people to talk about writing with, we can be those people for you. All we want is to be those people. So you can go to the Story Siren Studio Patreon. And it's, like I said, there are some tiers that you can pay to join if you want like exclusive content and stuff, but you can join the writers group for free. So do that and talk to us on the social media about writing. Obviously, it's like these episodes are like an hour and a half plus. We love to talk about writing. So yeah, I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
I think that was everything.
Sweet. Okay. Well, thank you guys again for joining us. And as always, we'll see you next week. Until then, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.